once you start getting up 18th, which is around the area that I live in, they say, you know, for people to please stay at home. If you have nowhere to stay, if you live in the lower Manhattan area, please just keep going north, keep going past Times Square. Try to contact a friend, see if you can stay somewhere, because lower Manhattan is just completely covered in debris. And they're just really telling people to get groceries, start stocking up, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, that's sort of, you know, the state of distress we're in right now is we just don't know what's happening, so we're inside of our homes. But the streets are covered in sirens and ambulances and people screaming, oh my God, it's the end of the world, what are we going to do? People are falling in the streets. It's the worst Jurassic Park type of movie that you could imagine. When the building fell, it was literally like King Kong was coming towards people, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people running towards Times Square to escape the building, covering them in debris.
How are you coping with what has happened? I mean, you're far from home, you're in a huge city. You know, it's certainly a violent time there. How are you coping? What are you doing to help yourself cope with this?
I guess calling my mom right now. It's a real feeling of being alone right now. Sorry, it's just really hard. The few friends that I do have been very supportive here that I've made in the company. And eventually maybe I'll make my way up towards that end of town. But right now I needed to come home and make phone calls and call my mom. And it's a really lonely time. If any time in your life that you didn't want to be alone was at a time like this, and it's not knowing the unexpected right now of what happens tomorrow, what happens tonight. You know, is this, you know, what happens when I wake up tomorrow morning, or do I wake up tomorrow morning? It's almost, you know, you're handed this dream and everything is supposed to be really great, and then, you know, the unexpected happens. So I'll just take it one day at a time right now.
Gina Madigan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And joining me now is Premier Roger Grimes, who has spent some time at the World Trade Center. And actually, you were saying that the Finance Minister, Joan Marie Aylward, was scheduled to go there next month for meetings and actually have dinner at the Trade Center. What did you think when you first heard the news this morning?
Actually, I'm probably like many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, like many Canadians and people in the United States, because there are so many connections between us. I think I'm still in a state of shock. Disbelief, I would say, is the real thing, because I was there the last time about 6 months ago. That's where most of the financial institutions are, the bond rating agencies, the people that lend the province money. Our finance minister was telling me this morning when it first broke that she was to be there in October for meetings and a dinner with these same people about the state of the province finances and our borrowing plans for the future and so on. And it strikes home when you've actually been there yourself. And the other thing is there are so many connections, Lynn, between people in the United States, in the New England states, in around New York and the Northeast, and Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, that there are an awful lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that are concerned today because they know people or know of people who are in New York, and it's been almost impossible all day to get in touch with anybody to see whether or not they're okay. And I saw and heard from my good friend Premier Bernard Lord, who had a delegation from New Brunswick in New York, and they were reporting back largely through the television medium that they were okay, because they had a lot of difficulty contacting their families to let them know that they weren't in the World Trade Center.
Now, you've been in contact with the emergency measures throughout the afternoon, I understand. Are you satisfied that we're able to cope with what's happening here today? All these airplanes coming in, is everything running the way it's supposed to run in an emergency situation like this?
I think so, very much so. Despite everyone's planning, I don't believe any of us envisaged a circumstance where every airport in the United States and Canada would be shut down. It certainly is clear that we are strategically positioned. All of these planes that are in St. John's and Gander and Stephenville and Goose Bay were transatlantic flights that were coming from parts of Europe heading for the United States, American destinations. We'll handle it, and I'm sure that they don't need a plea for me, but everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador that's listening to us will come to the forefront, as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians always do. And there are ways for people in Goose Bay and Gander and Stephenville and here in St. John's to get in touch with members of the volunteer organizations and the emergency measures organization to see if we can, in our usual way, open up our homes and our hearts and volunteer to see if we can assist these people who have the trauma. Most of us think it's traumatic. to be stuck in an airport for 4 or 5 hours just when a flight is delayed because of fog or so on. These people are sitting there trying to get to the United States as well. They have only partial information about what has or has not happened.
Probably
they don't know
enough
how long
information
to be
know
delayed.
that they should be very thankful that they're alive today.
Very much so, and they don't know how long the delay will be. We do know for a fact that the airspace in the United States will not be open until noon tomorrow at the earliest, so we will have to do our best to accommodate these people. Others I know are already going to the Canadian Blood Service because they're looking for blood already in New York City. The Canadian Blood Service organization has agreed that it will try to provide where they're short, and there are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, of course, that always contribute in that fashion. I know of people now that have heard this and have watched it on the news today and have already left to go to the nearest location to see if they can donate blood, which they regularly do.
And what specifically will the province do to help these passengers, who I understand most of them are going to be taken to Mile One Stadium? What role does the government play here in terms of providing lodging or providing food, that sort of thing?
Basically, we're the last call, I guess, in terms of the emergency measures organization is triggered by the city or town. The mayor, Mayor Wells, has been on today indicating that their full emergency plan is in place. They'll do anything and everything they can, and what we're doing is giving them the assurance that if they come short, if they need something in terms of transportation, bedding, extra food, accommodation that they can't possibly manage from their own resources, that they shouldn't let something not happen because they might have a little bit of lack of money at that point in time. Let's accommodate these people. Let's be the kind of people that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are. Take care of everything. And we'll sort it out with the airlines afterwards in terms of who really bears cost when some are involved. But it's an issue, I think, where everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador, I believe, is really in a state of disbelief and shock. And the best thing we can do is rise to the challenge now and show these people who are, at this point, in a state of disruption and chaos themselves with respect to their own travel, that we'll do everything we can to help them out.
Premier Grimes, as a political leader, and you've been in politics a long time, but I'm quite sure it's hard to get your mind around what has to be going on at the George Bush level today, trying to deal with this. Characterize this event for us. What do you think this is going to mean for world relations, for terrorism? What are your hopes of something positive that could possibly come out of this, so we don't see something like this again?
That's probably the only thing that any and all of us could hope that does come out. It's such a tragedy. The size and scope of it is yet to be determined because they're still trying to determine that right in New York itself, as well as what's happened in Washington at the Pentagon. It's a major, startling shock for the American system in terms of them. They will unfortunately start to second guess their own security provisions, and because I heard commentators as I watched some of it today in between meetings and so on, where they suggested now they're second guessing, do they have enough security at the airports? Was this safe enough? Have we done enough? And hopefully from that introspection we'll see maybe some improvements again in the security system, but learn from it to make sure that we now do know that nobody is safe from a terrorist activity, and we should all stand on guard against that, because you know, it just can't be tolerated. It's something that you can't really control. You don't know what to do about it, but I'm sure that the leaders like President Bush will take advice and counsel from other world leaders like Prime Minister Chrétien.
That's right.
And they'll find some good solutions out of this at the end of the piece.
Yeah. I want to thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, and appreciate it. And I really do, I'm convinced that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, particularly in these four communities, will shine in these few hours now, and make sure we can do everything possible.
Okay, thank you once again. And as Premier Grimes mentioned just a while ago, the mayor of St. John's has announced that Mile One Stadium will be available to accommodate the thousands of passengers who are now in St. John's at the airport. And we spoke with Andy Wells earlier this afternoon, and to find out exactly what those plans are for the American passengers.
Well, we've activated our emergency preparedness plan, and we've established a control center at the Central Fire Station. And I think our marshalling area for passengers is obviously going to be at this location. We've established the kitchen over in the convention center will be used to provide people with meals. The concessionaires in the Mile One Stadium have also have been opened. The province is responsible for the accommodations issue, and we will be working very closely with them. I understand they think they can find accommodations for all of these unfortunate people. So we're doing the best we can. I don't know how many agencies are involved, but any and every agency that's relevant to these circumstances, of course, has been involved, and we will certainly coordinate things as best we can, and as we get more information, we will certainly make it available.
How many people have you been told that you're going to have to accommodate here?
Well, we don't really know. Nobody's been released from any of the aircraft. I think the latest estimate, or the latest number of aircraft on the ground is, I believe it's 19 aircraft, and I think there's another 5 en route, so you could have 25 aircraft, and these are all, of course, transatlantic flights, so they're fairly large planes, so you're talking about aircraft that probably got a potential of 250 to 300 or more passengers. So we don't know. I guess all we can say now is somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 passengers. Depends on what's aboard and how many people are aboard and who arrives. I understand there's some security issues that have to be addressed. You better address those questions to the immigration, to the RNC, and to the RCMP.
And just a while ago, we heard from Tina Madigan, a young actress in New York City who is quite upset about what happened today, understandably so. Another Newfoundlander was in New York City and just a very short distance from the World Trade Center when the first explosion went off. His name is Paul Cavanaugh, and he's originally from Kilbride. He's now living in British Columbia. He was visiting New York City, and earlier today he spoke with NTV's Jim Furlong.